What's up, everybody? It's Izzy, and in today's video I want to talk about my philosophy on coaching cues, whether you're telling it to another lifter or to yourself. So first of all, what is a coaching cue? A coaching cue is usually a quick word, or at the very least a very short phrase that a lifter already understands that it means something more complex. So for example, you might be telling a lifter to have a stable torso position throughout the squat, but you're not going to yell at them during the squat. Have a stable torso position throughout the squat. You might just say chest up or something if they have a problem with their chest tipping forward. Or during the deadlift, let's say somebody has a problem with rounding their back. You're not going to say have a perfectly neutral spine while you deadlift. You're going to say like set your back, or you might just say, back. Like, whatever. The lifter has to understand what the cue means beforehand or before that it's given. So in this video, I'm going to focus on really self-cueing, because I think that's more so what a lot of you guys do, and really most powerlifters self-cue. That is, it's pretty uncommon nowadays for people to actually work with a coach every single session in person. So a lot of the cues that you guys use are things that you're telling yourself while you're under the bar. First, I want to differentiate between like a setup checklist and coaching cues. While technically you can have cues for setting up your lift, I'm focusing on what happens underneath the bar. So while you set up for a squat, you might think about your grip, your stance width, getting big air, all sorts of different things, your walkout, and you might have a huge checklist of things, like 5 or 6 things that you do in order while you're setting up. Now, the differentiating factor here is that you're still setting the lift up, so you're not necessarily lifting anything yet, and there's more time to think about what you're doing in order to get things correct. Now, this is very different than when you're actually underneath the bar, because when you're actually underneath the bar, you cannot, or you at least should not, in my opinion, be thinking about a whole bunch of different things at once. When you do that, what ends up happening, let's say you have 4 or 5 coaching cues that you're trying to give yourself during a lift, you end up doing all of them poorly. And instead of any one of them benefiting you, it really doesn't help very much at all. It would be like trying to learn a new skill in any other sport, say like soccer, basketball, and you're trying to tell yourself 5 different things while you're shooting a shot. There's just not enough time to do that. And by doing that, you don't give yourself enough time to think about what you're actually saying anyway. So a lot of novices and intermediates, in my opinion, treat coaching cues like Pokemon. Like, you gotta catch them all, bro. And really, it's not the case. In my experience, what works best for cueing, especially self-cueing, is to have one cue at a time. You only want to focus on one thing at a time, and that's because you really just don't have enough time under the bar to think about anything else anyway. The weight should be challenging to lift in and of itself, and if you're thinking about 4 different things, you're just going to be too distracted to perform optimally. So as far as what cue that you should use, it totally depends for the lifter, and it changes throughout time. In my opinion, the thing that you should be cueing yourself on is whatever your biggest error is, or whatever that if you fixed it, it would fix the most amount of errors. So let's say that somebody has knee cave and their hips shoot back and they good morning a squat. Well, saying knees out might help them with the knees thing, but it might not fix the, the good morning thing and getting tipped over. So they might want to use a cue that focuses more on torso position, like say hips forward. So there's different strategies here, right? And anyway, the point that I really want to make here is that you should cue one thing at a time while you're actually underneath the bar. Fix one problem at a time, and when you've cued it for long enough, when you've drilled it for long enough, and it's no longer really an issue for you, move on to another cue. Cues aren't these immutable, unchanging things that you use for your entire career. And you really don't need 5 or 6 of them for every single lift that you're using during each and every single rep. That's just not helpful. It will overload you. In my opinion, over time, when you're talking about peak performance, optimal performance, your goal should be moving towards a lifting style where you don't actually think at all. You're just 100% in touch with the sensations of the lift, and you just perform naturally under the bar. Now, in order to get there, or if you have problems at the time, you're going to cue things in training. But when you're actually on the stage, on the platform for game day, I really don't want people thinking about 7 different things while they're under the bar. And in fact, even thinking about one thing can be enough to distract them from simply lifting as hard as possible to move the most amount of weight. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't cue yourself on the platform, but what I am saying is that you want to really limit your use of cues, be judicious, pick the cue that makes the biggest difference for your overall performance in any given lift, and don't try to be the typical novice or intermediate lifter who tries to figure out every single cue for every single lift and somehow use them all at the same time, because you're end up going to, instead of having a, a style that adheres to your body type and is natural and promotes good movement patterns, you're going to end up with a Frankenstein mishmash of a bunch of different crap that's totally unnatural, distracts you from moving naturally under the bar, and ends up hurting way more than it helps. A lot of times I have to just clear people's heads, especially with the squat, to get them moving the right way. So anyways, guys, that's my opinion. When you're using cues, use one at a time and pick the one that's the most important in terms of correcting your biggest form error. Hope you guys found the video informative and entertaining. As always, my friends, good luck with your training and have a nice day. Peace.